application for residency, permanent residency. I want to just help a lot of people that want this opportunity for themselves and for their children to be able to do this. I was lucky enough that my great-grandparents brought my grandmother here, or came here to be born so that this opportunity could be given, but a lot of people don't have that. So I kind of want to give them what I was given. I feel like God, put me to be born here for that reason, to help others that weren't. So I do have those goals and dreams to help other people stay in this country or be able to come here legally. My name is Gabriela Ramirez, as it says on this name tag, but I do not go by that. I go by Gabby because it sounds a lot cooler, and it's the nickname I was given at birth, basically. So I was born in Clovis, New Mexico. About 24 years ago. And my family immigrated here from Mexico. So basically, I got the luck of the draw being born here. Kind of given me a lot of opportunities. And so, but a part of me is still in Mexico. Probably my culture, my heart, everything, my family's there. So it's basically why I decided to use bits and pieces of that in this documentary, so it gives it more of a personal feeling as possible. Well, my dad was working. He got his residency because my grandma was born in Colorado, and so he was able to get his residency before I was even, born or thought of. So he found work here in Clovis, and this is where he was able to settle down, find a house, and that's whenever he fixed documentation for my mom and my oldest brother before me and my other brother were born. So that's how we ended up here, and we just never left, basically. And so my whole life has been nothing but back and forths from here to Mexico. So basically that's it. It's typically very hard if you don't have a relative that was already born here, or you can marry into it, but it can take up to years. Luckily, and now it takes longer than it did then. Luckily, my grandma was an American citizen, so she was able to fix papers for my dad, and he's legal resident still. But then it took about 3 months for him to give my mom residency because of their marriage and the child and stuff. But nowadays it definitely takes a lot longer. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of how I ended up here. So they were here and I was born here. We're from Chihuahua City, Chihuahua, Mexico, like the puppy. That's kind of what the big city experience that I've had in my life, because Clovis, New Mexico is fairly small, give or take, but that's kind of where I've had most of my big city experience. My dad and his siblings and my grandpa actually have a ranch outside of Chihuahua, and him and my uncles would come into the city to go to bars, have fun, it's kind of where the life is. And so they actually met in front of a famous cathedral church located in the center, and that's actually in front of there where they met, and it's all history from there, Mm-hmm. Considering that that's where basically my life began, I guess you can say, because if my parents wouldn't have met, I would not be here right now.
So your whole life pretty much began in Mexico?
Yes, it did. It revolves around Mexico, began in Mexico. Like I said, it's all in existence to, it all comes back to Mexico, and my parents came here to get that, to give us that better life that people say. But it all originated from Mexico, mm-hmm. basically.
And what is it like, going back and forth between, America and Mexico, the whole process of being away from family and then coming here and living the dream, things like that?
It's very exhausting, both physically and emotionally. You kind of go through roller coasters of emotions. when you go back and forth, because either, you know, you don't want to go, I think something that I've kind of adapted is I have to come back to be able to return to them. I have to go through the pain of leaving them to have the excitement to see them again. And so it's very hard. My whole life I've spent with, you know, it's been nothing but hellos and goodbyes, and it's very painful, but it's given me opportunities that I don't think I would have if I would have grown up there.
Mm-hmm.
My childhood was, it was good because we were growing up in a place where, like I said, we were able to learn a second language and have more educational opportunities, but at the same time it was very, at points, lonely, because, you know, you want to be in a place where you have all your cousins, where you have all your aunts and uncles, and where you see them every day, and that's not what we had. It was very hard, even though we did have big events like birthday parties and things like that there. It was extremely hard growing up, not being able to see my cousins every day, and not growing up with them, not going to their same schools, and only seeing them every other year, and knowing that when you did leave, the next time you'd be there you'd be older, to be significantly different.
Mm-hmm.
So it was very hard in that aspect.
Mm-hmm.
Life events, graduations, things like that were very lonely, again, because they weren't there, and then me, like myself, I wasn't there to see theirs either, so it was very hard, very sad in that aspect. Being born here, I have to have an American passport to come back into the country. I also have to have one to go into Mexico, but in that case I would have to be a tourist, which to go in and go out without being charged any fees, you have to be both citizenships. So basically what I had to do was I had to have my parents prove that they were born in Mexico, and that is how I was given citizenship, so that I could go into Mexico as a citizen and come back as an American citizen. So that kind of, that's kind of how I do it, but a lot of people do it the tourist way. I decided to become a dual citizen when I got my braces. I realized that I would be going fairly often, every 2 months, give or take, to get them tightened, and that's when I decided that if it was possible, I wanted to become a dual citizen, because first, I didn't want to pay the tourist permits every 2 months, and second, it's a big part of me that I think, even though I was born in the US, Mexico is a very big part of me, and is where my family is, and once there was a time where I considered maybe living there, so going back and living there for a few years, so it's basically why I decided to do it. You belong in both countries just the same. I have a right to vote in Mexico now. I have a right to own assets, property, things like that. I can basically have a life in both places, and that's, I think that it's a part of me. It's kind of like I was reborn in the place that my family lies, so it's kind of like I feel like I became one of them in a way. Even though I've always been one of them, it kind of gave me that attachment to them even more, because now I can do the same things that they do in their country, and then in mine as well. Maintaining both US passports and Mexican passports, having to keep up with both, having to travel to Albuquerque for the Mexican consulate to obtain a new passport, having to pay the fee for the US one. I think that's probably the hardest part, is just the expense. But other than that, I don't really see anything too hard. That's probably the only difficulty that really comes with it. What it means to me is that I do belong in both. That a part of my heart is in Mexico. That I basically, I was born in the US and I go to school here and everything, but a big part of me, which would be my family and everybody, is in Mexico. And so it means it's kind of just bringing the best parts of me together in a way. Being able to be in both countries equally is very, very meaningful in a way that I never imagined. So it is very rewarding.
Mm-hmm.
Now he has an American passport. I believe that I cannot give him dual citizenship until I've been one for a few years, but that is the plan. He has an American passport. He's had it since he was 2 months old, and all he has is Mexico stamps on the visa part. It's very special, it's very rewarding, I think, I would hope for him, because he is experiencing another country that I experienced when I was young, and he's experiencing cousins and family, and even though he looks fairly different than them because of his culture, he is very accepted, and I think that that's something that he's adapting more to, and I think that he enjoys Mexican culture a little bit more. And that's kind of what, I think that I hope that it's gonna be as rewarding to him as it was to me at that age. I have this cousin that, she's about 4 years older than me, and I actually named my son after her, but I hadn't really seen her in a while, and but she meant a lot to me regardless, and it was just different, and I got to actually spend time with her and actually get to know her. I was 23, she was 27, and we do have a distance of age gap, I guess you can say, but in that time we really did kind of grow closer and got to know each other, and I think that it just kind of made me realize how special my family really is, and how much time I missed not getting to know her or her sister or her parents at that. And there's reasons why we didn't, but that's another story. And so her specifically is something I'm very thankful for, getting to know her, getting to be closer to. And I mean, based on my social media, you see a lot of pictures with her, and I think that it's something that I'm very, very thankful for and that I think about often. Another family member that I kind of want to talk about that I got closer to is my niece. I was 5 when she was born. We grew up, give or take, I'd see her every once in a while. It wasn't too much until this time where I actually got to spend time with her and get to know her as her becoming a young lady. She's 18, right now I'm 23, I'm about to be 24. But, we were 5 years apart, and I got to know her, talk to her, spend actual time with her, get to know her as a person. She's my grandfather's oldest great grandchild, and I never had that relationship with her, and now I do, and it's great, and I talk to her every day, and I check in on her, she checks in on me, and actually got to attend her high school graduation, and that's something that I never imagined doing, and so it was very, very special to get to know these special people that I have already. Going into whenever we were going in January, I remember asking God, just give me something, and he kind of opened my eyes and just said, you already have it, and it's kind of, these two people specifically have made a huge difference in my life in the past year, and I wouldn't trade them for anything. I only regret not knowing this sooner. So I got to be in a wedding. That's another thing. I never imagined I'd get to be in this cousin's specific wedding, because again, if anything, I hadn't seen her since I was a little girl, or her siblings. And so to be actually invited and to be in her wedding and to be a bridesmaid was a huge honor. Very different. Bridesmaids, they pick a color and you just have to match the color. You don't really have to have the same dress. You pay money to be a bridesmaid, I guess. You give money to support the wedding. Very different culturally. There's 2 weddings, 2 separate days, back to back, and the first wedding is the formal. You would see, here probably more American style, basic, and then there's what they call a tornaboda, which is kind of like a wedding revamped. And that was held at my grandpa's ranch, and it was very special, very rewarding. I had a blast at both. I think the one at the ranch was a little more special, but you know, it's just huge. It's, you know, you have a band in both of them. You're just with your whole family. You eat. You do all these things, and it's just a blast. And I've never had so much fun at a wedding. Mm-hmm. So it was very rewarding too, and I got to actually be in this one, so it was great.
Mm-hmm.
In early 2017, we went to Mexico. I would say late December, more like to spend New Year's there. My uncle, Luis, he was very sick he had cancer, and he was very sick, ended up in the hospital, and sadly ended up passing away. I think that although the passing was very hard for us as well, you know, even more for my aunt and my cousins, I think that with his passing came a lot of unity in the family, and I felt a unity that I've never felt before with them, and I think that that's something that is very special. When it comes to my uncle Luis was probably one of the nicest people I've ever known in my life, and he was always sweet. He'd always do barbecues, he'd always cook, and I think that it's the way that I remember him, and he was always so happy. And even though he wasn't directly the one related to me because he married into the family, he was just the sweetest guy in the world, and he would give you the shirt off his back. And I think that that's someone that I look up to a lot and looked up to, and it's painful that he's gone, and that's kind of what makes it so painful. And you know, his 3 daughters are very successful, and I care about my cousins a lot, and he loved my aunt and my cousins to the fullest, and I think that that's probably what I miss about him the most. And was the death of my grandmother. That death, I was 3 years old. She was very sick, and I got to be in the house when she died. We had been living in Mexico for a year actually, and she ended up dying. It's the first memory I have as a little kid, and I can tell you probably everything I did that day, and it's hard. 20 years late, I mean, you know, it's been 20 years since then, but it still haunts me to this day. When it comes to my grandma, I have a cousin. She's 24. Her name is Gabby also, and basically we were named the same. We weren't given a middle name. Neither of us were. So we didn't have a way to like differentiate us because all you could do is call both of us Gabby. And so I remember my grandma thought that was really weird, and so she called us in English. I mean, it would be flower 1 and flower 2, which I don't get how that's very different than calling us Gabby. When it comes to her, even though I didn't have her that much in my life, that is something very significant to me every time I see a flower or something like that. The next significant moment was probably when my maternal grandfather died on April 30th of 2013. It was hard. I was, I believe, 18 years old when that happened. We weren't there when it happened, but it was very stressful to have to go and have that pain already lingering, and it was horrible. After that, I couldn't go back for 2 years. It was just too painful. When it comes to my grandfather, my mom's dad, he was always there in my life. I think that he's one of the grandparents that I've had most. He was kind of invincible. I remember that he could fix anything, and he could do anything and tell us stories and stuff, and I think that that's something about him that I'm never gonna forget, is just the way he was and the way he wore his glasses and just everything about him. Out of the grandparents that have died, he's the one that I've spent the most time with, and I think that that's why he has a very, very special place in my heart, and it's very hard up till this day to even think that he's gone. Very hard to believe that he's not there. So the fourth hardest and the most significant death, and the most recent, happened on November 20th of 2017, which was the loss of my paternal grandfather. Very hard. Actually went to get my braces tightened and to get more film for this documentary, and he ended up dying of complications of colon cancer. It was extremely hard. One of the hardest days of my life, I'm not gonna lie. But I got to be there in the house, and I got to be there days before he left, and I got to be there when he died. I think that it's gonna make it hard for me to go back, but I have to. It makes me very thankful for these braces, because I wouldn't have been there if it hadn't been for me having to get them tightened. So it's actually something very ironic, but it's one of the things that I think has shaped me as a person even now, even though it happened so recently, and I still think about it every day, but it's kind of here, and I really wanted to, dedicate this documentary to all these four people that have meant the world to me, and sadly I've lost there, but that's where they're buried, and that's where, that's kind of why I say that, that's where my heart is, because that's where they are.
Buscando por esas tierras tan bellas de Zitácuaro a Huentamo, de Apatzingán a Morelia, ya me sueño acariciando esa.
When it comes to my grandpa that I just lost, my paternal grandpa, he's the reason why I have this last name, and so he's the head warrior, the head honcho of his ranch, and I think that it's something that's kind of what I want to be,
Okay.
6 months ago, he still walked, he still could read without glasses, he was like a superhero, and for somebody being in his 90s, you don't see that here, you don't see that anywhere, and so he was just amazing and incredible and just this warrior, and he fought until the last moment of his life, and that's something that I wouldn't trade for anything. So he was just a strong-willed person, and he was just so strong, and that's kind of why I miss him so much up until this day. But that's kind of... In 2 weeks, I will be the first ever in both sides of the family to have a master's degree, and that's very cool. I think that it's made me want to pursue my education even further for the opportunities that I have been given. So I decided to go to law school because I saw the current immigration situation that was going on with the government and stuff, and it's something that has always been a big passion of mine. Even though I was given the opportunity to be born here and to not ever struggle in that sense, I don't like the way that people fear for the fear of deportation hurts me. The splitting up of families hurts me. Discrimination hurts me.
Because it's who you are.
Because it's who I am. Exactly. And so I made the decision to become an immigration lawyer, to hopefully pursue law school because of this. Because I was always the one that looks into renewing the green card, renewing citizenship. I'm always the one in my family that looks up those laws and studies them and tells them what they can and cannot do, and so that's why I figured that that's kind of what I want to do one day, and it's always been a big passion of mine. I come from two places. I grew up in one with roots from another, and both mean a lot to me, and I kind of want people to know that it's hard to juggle two countries in your life. It's hard to juggle two sets of people, two sets of, whatever you want to call it, family over there, your friends here, but it's doable. And it's part of who I am, and kind of just to embrace who you are in every second of every day, because that's where you come from. That's where your traits come from, your genes. That's why you look this way. That's why you are a certain way, is because of, this place, this culture. And I think it's just kind of just to embrace the culture even more is kind of what I want to get at. I want people to get out of it. Another thing that I kind of want to make clear out of all this is that I don't regret my life here. I have a lot of people that I've met that are amazing and incredible, and I wouldn't trade them for anything in the world that otherwise I wouldn't have known. Being able to speak two languages is very special as well, very different. Being able to learn a lot of other cultures, because the US is so full of immigrants from so many different places, I get to learn a lot. And so I don't trade being here for anything. I don't trade growing up here for anything. I would have liked to have more of a life in Mexico, but I don't trade the opportunities I was given in this country. I don't regret being born here. I'm extremely lucky.
Audio Jungle.